minutes.
Okay. So before that, I want one or two people to just tell us how their day went. And for people that have joined groups, how are you enjoying your group? One or two people, you tell us how your day went, how your week last week was. Some of the things that maybe found out more about your business, and also whether or not you're enjoying the new groups that you've been distributed into. I know everybody has been distributed into one group or the other. If you have not, please reach out to any of the admins on the group. But for now, please let us know how your week was. So one or two people that are willing to just a brief, my week went well, my group members, we are coming up with this idea, or maybe you still want to keep it to yourself, but just a brief, a brief overview of how your week has been and how your group has also been, and the ideas you're coming up with. I might call randomly if no one volunteers. Or maybe the very first person. I think Amarachi was the first person to join this call. So I don't know if she wants to just give us a brief how our week went. Just a rundown of your week. Okay. I think maybe I'll just go then. Mine was great. It involved a lot of meetings, but great nonetheless. And we would soon. Is Amarachi about to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, good morning. Nice to have you on the call again. Hello? All right. So I think the network might
LinkedIn courses,
okay.
different courses, just different topics.
All right, thank you. So Amarachi's week seems to have been very productive. I've seen that some people have asked for permission to record, and I declined that, but that's because we'll be recording on our end, we'll edit, and then we'll send this to you right after we are done with it. So there's no need to record. All of that will be done for you. We'll send you the slides at the end. We'll send you the recordings, and then you can still reach out to the facilitator after this is done. So every resource that you need would actually be sent. There's no need to record. That's why I declined the earlier request to record from, I think, about 2 different people. So yes, thank you, Amarachi, for giving us a brief breakdown of how your week was. And we're happy to hear that it was productive. So now that we are done with brief intros of last week, we would hand over to Mr. Adibawale or Parino to please go ahead and let me stick on this topic. So thank you very much. So yes, for those that are just joining, I gave a brief intro of Mr. Adibawale. He is a co-founder of My Stash. My Stash is a fintech company that caters to the young adults demographic. It was acquired in the very first year of its establishment. I also explained that that's not the very first form of entrepreneurship he's dabbling into. He was previously co-founder of a food processing business. He was also the country manager of Max NG. I want to believe most of us have heard of that also. He also belongs to several prestigious fellowships, such as the Mandela Washington Fellowship and several others. And so we see that this is someone that is well-versed in this area of entrepreneurship. So I want us to please listen, especially because this is something that is going to help us with the projects that we are taking on in the various groups we've been split into. You've generated ideas. How can you ensure that these are ideas that have an existing market that you are solving for? Or do you just, the idea supposed to, is every idea valid? Ideas going to be something that must always be launched? So these are things we're going to look at today. So over to you, Mr. Adibawale or Parino. We are very glad to have you in our midst. So yes, you can go ahead with the lecture, sir. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? I am Adibawale, and it's great to be here. I can see we have about, close to 20 people on the call. Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I think that sort of summarizes it. I was city manager at Max, though, not country manager. I thought it's good to do
Oh,
it.
sorry. Yeah, that's a mistake on that. City man.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. It's all good. That said, it's great to be here and great work that you guys are doing. And it's obvious that, anywhere people are building amazing solutions or trying to build amazing solutions, it's always just a really exciting process. Either the business is successful or not, that's another thing for another day. But the mere participation in the entire process, in learning through what is possible, in just really exploring what we can do as individuals is always very exciting. And I think that that's a very good place to start off today. So I'm going to share slides and present, but if possible, not if possible, I think it is possible. I'd love each and every one of us to participate as much as possible. So I'll be asking a lot of questions. I'd be hoping I wouldn't have to call names before we get answers. And then we try to take things on from there. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just going to share my screen now. Just a minute. Okay, can we all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, I'm just gonna do interview. Yeah. Okay, great. So today it's about how do we generate ideas and how do we validate the market, right? I understand some of you have moved along already and done a lot of really interesting things. You might have already created the idea. You might have already started creating like the prototype for it. It's still okay. It's totally fine. Any part you are along the value chain works well. Is someone saying something? Okay, no. Yeah. Today is just really about reviewing again what has worked across the world, what has been successful, what is not, which processes did they probably follow, and which processes are we going to, follow in simple terms. So generating ideas, just going straight into it, right? I know everyone loves the idea bulb has become has become the symbol for everything related to great ideas. And I'm sure we all know where that comes from. It comes from the light bulb moment that everybody sort of references. And now that has really just transformed and become the bedrock of everything that we do today. The first thing I like to look at is there are so many ways to generate ideas, but I think three have stood out really strongly over the years across the world for me personally. The first one being people actually just stumble on ideas. And some of our biggest innovations were things that people stumbled on. I remember when we were taking very early physics classes, they told us about, the discovery of graffiti was something that was inspired as a result of a fruit falling from the tree. And I wondered, so if that that fruit was not falling that day, or whoever it was that made the discovery was not looking or paying attention in that moment, then maybe we would have pushed the discovery of graffiti a bit forward by a few more years. We'll go into more examples, and I'll let you hear more examples about some ideas that you think are successful today, but it was actually just by chance that it was discovered. Another one is obviously people go around and actually intentionally search for solutions. So they feel, okay, there's a problem to be solved, or there's an opportunity here, and we want to search for an idea that can help us capture that opportunity. So there are things around that and the things that we can really do to make that happen. Again, there are a lot of examples. I would like to hear from you first before I go on to, give examples from my past. And the last one, which I think people don't really pay attention to, but ends up playing a very significant role, are ideas that are legacy inspired. And what do I mean by that? So these are ideas that, as a result of your upbringing, as a result of the things that you are really surrounded with, you are uniquely positioned to think of certain ideas well ahead of what the average person would think, right? Let me look for a great example. A great example would be if I were born in the 70s, when, computers were very rare, they were big mainframe computers and all of that. And my father was already a software engineer at Intel at the time. There's a very high chance that, compared to the average person that had never seen a computer, I would generate a lot of software-related ideas by far than the average person that had never seen a computer. So I would say those are some of the examples of things that are, in a sense, legacy inspired. And you may not believe this, but regardless of where you grew up from or where you are, where you've come from, regardless of whatever that means, you probably have something in your legacy that can help you generate really great ideas for the world. Because whichever position you are in, there are probably many people that your experience can serve. And this is first a mindset thing. I know today is about ideas, not necessarily about mindsets and philosophy, but usually all of these things come together and really play a significant role in how us human beings sort of come up with great things. So without much ado, let's go into specifics, right? I would like to hear from you now. Tell me about 2, 3, 1 ideas each that you think are great today, but the people that discovered it found it by accident. Who wants to go first? I've been hoping I won't have to call names, so please, who wants to go first? You're on mute now in case you're saying something.
Please, can you repeat the question? It's kind of confusing.
Okay. Think of an idea that is successful today, but was discovered by accident. That is, the person wasn't intentionally searching for it. Maybe they were searching for something else, or it just randomly came to them. And then they decided to go with it, and it became very successful. Is that clearer now?
Yes.
Great. So, please, go on. I'm with you.
Okay, let me talk about this social media stuff.
Okay.
Maybe the person that created like Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, they had in mind something like creating something for their friend zone, like something that they will just be communicating with or just for fun. It's not actually something they think that we, kind of earn money for people, just like something for fun, something they will just use for fun among their friend zone. But on the way they now realize like if this have to kind of go viral, like it's going to be a great help and it's going to kind of promote technology. It's going to be easy to pass information. It's going to be easy to communicate with other countries or other nations. It's going to be easy to develop some certain things. So I think that's how the idea of this social media became popular, and it's kind of benefiting now.
Interesting. I actually really like your example, primarily because you've just done something that I didn't even plan for, which is certain ideas. I would say, for example, to be honest, I think that with the way social media came to be, there was a lot of intentionality in the initial stage, right? There was a problem to be solved, which was we want to communicate with our friends. And the solution they built did precisely that. But as they continue to evolve, just like you have described, they stumbled on a gold mine of how it makes money. And that's another part we would need to come to specifically. But yes, the core of the idea itself, we can still put it a little bit more under search, because they were kind of intentional about really creating a solution. But that was a really good one, because along the line, then they begin to stumble on things by accident, in quotes, based on, you know, the demand that customers bring and all of that. And then they had to adapt, tweak to make sure that they can meet the demand that they have just found. So yes, that's a very good point, because then that brings us to the point where we can now see that the same business can have different nuances. So it can start off with search and an intentional approach to generating the ideas. And along the line, it can stumble on gold mines and all of that actually really makes it successful. And I think that's a really good one. Any other examples? Who wants to go next? I need just one more example before we go into the examples I have planned out.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Blessed?
I'm very well, thank you. So, an example that I'd like to give is OPay digital services in Nigeria.
Right.
So when they started off first, they were more concentrated on transportation. They wanted
Right.
to make, I think it was based on logistics, or you could book a ride, but instead of you to get a vehicle, you get a bike, which is way faster and well, I mean, the bikes could go to places that vehicles could not. But eventually, along the line, I think during the COVID-19, when there was a lockdown or something, or during the non-cashless policy, that was when they decided to, go big on fintech, the banking system. And right now they're topping the chart in, I mean, when you compare traditional banks to fintech, when it comes to fintech, OPay tops the chart. I hope that's a good example.
Yeah, I think that is a great example. And I'm happy to provide a bit more context in that, because I was an insider in the industry at the time. So yes, you are 100% correct. When OPay started, their primary product was O-Ride, right? Not even the POS operations, not any of those things. What they were primarily known for was O-Ride. And they shut down O-Ride actually before COVID-19 happened. It was the ban in Lagos that made them shut down. So the Lagos state government obviously banned Okadas, including the standardized ones. So there was the one for Max where I was, there was the one for OPay, there was the one for Gokada as well. So those were the three major leaders in the ride-hailing industry at the time for bikes. And the three different companies took three different totally approaches in response to the ban. For Max, their approach was, well, we think there is a great opportunity to continue serving customers in terms of, ride-hailing for human beings. So what we're going to do is, if Lagos says they don't want us, there are so many other cities across Africa that we can go to that want us. And it worked perfectly for them. They went into so many other cities, not just in Nigeria. They moved into Ghana, they're currently in Egypt, and then in Nigeria, they're in Ibadan, Akure, and many, many other cities where they serve thousands of drivers today and a lot more thousands of customers. And that strategy worked perfectly for them. But in the case of OPay, obviously for Gokada, we know what they did. They chose to stay in Lagos, not really move outside of Lagos, but invest heavily in logistics. And the strategy also worked well for them, right? Today, they are probably the leader as long as logistics delivery is concerned. So even when you order on Uber for Uber delivery or Uber packages, it's probably being delivered by Gokada bike rider. And then for OPay, they took a totally different approach, which is really beautiful. Again, they had, in order to be able to facilitate rides, in quotes, to avoid tautologies, yes, they had built a bit of fintech infrastructure. So you could pay for your ride directly from the app, you could, connect your card, and a few of the basic things that you should be able to do to make, like riding with them easy. And that had attracted a lot of customers to their platform. So they figured, why let go of all these customers simply because we are shutting down that entire business? What if the customers we have already onboarded, we can transfer them into this fintech infrastructure that we initially built for transportation? At least that's what it looked like to every one of us using them outside at the time. And it worked perfectly for them. They went all out with the POS part, they went all out with the fintech part, and everything worked perfectly. Today, OPay does nothing related to transportation directly. So I really love that example. Yes, that's another example of stumbling at something by accident. So I'll take us, thank you so much for the two examples. I'm very grateful. Take us on a journey of, let's say, a bit of history. I have 3 examples listed here that all 3 of them came as a result of accidents. For Post-its, many of us might have heard that story before. It's probably one of the most common by a mile. The story of Post-its was simple. This guy in the lab, I think in the 1940s, not sure of the time range now, was trying to create an additive, like a glue that is, in simple terms, a simple glue that is very strong. That was the goal. And then, he tried and all of that. The way we have, what's this, our popular glue called? Anyways, the way we have all kinds of glue today that, it can instantly glue your stuff. Those were the things he was trying to create. But then what he ended up creating was so weak. And by chance, I think he just got stuck on the paper or something like that. And he figured, oh, wow, this can be useful somewhere else. And today, I have used this Post-it notes so many times. I think there is almost no group session to go to today that involves, brainstorming, talking to people and all of that, working in a team that you're probably not using any of these things. That's a great definition of completely by accident. I'd like you to also take some time, research into how penicillin was discovered, how microwave was discovered, all of these inventions, and I intentionally picked inventions because, again, when we think about broad ideas and great ideas, it's usually just things we want them to be as novel, as unique as possible. And these are just really examples of things that are being completely new, born out of sheer accident. Nobody was thinking about putting weak glue on paper so that you can temporarily put it on something or like make it stay on a board or something like that. No, there was no problem that they saw that made them feel we needed to create this. And there was absolutely no initial demand for any of that made them feel, oh, this had to be created. No, none of that. All that simply happened was they were trying to solve a totally different problem, trying to create a totally different product. And along the line, they failed to do that, only for them to be successful at doing something else entirely as a result of that. Again, just like the OPay story that you gave, which I think from an idea generation standpoint, that was the perfect example. So yes, take it as an assignment, check out how the situation for penicillin happened and how microwave happened as well. So we move on to the next one, right, which is an intentional search. And every time we talk about idea generation, I think most of us just really primarily focus on this because understandably, this is the one thing that we have a lot of control over. We get to, just handle things the way we see a problem, we think there is a solution to it, and we go all out to find that solution. It would be great to hear examples. Again, 1 or 2 examples, 2 people that have not said anything yet. Feel free to jump in. Tell us any of the great examples that you think came as a result of an intentional search for a solution to an existing problem.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mufe. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Awesome.
I think one solution to a problem is the dustpan. The
Duster.
invention of dustpan.
What?
Dustpan.
Can you describe it? I'm struggling to understand what that is.
Dustpan for packing dirt when you sweep.
Oh, like a dustbin?
No, the dustpan itself.
Okay.
Let me write it.
Dustpan, I think like the
Dustpan.
packer.
What did you call it?
Dustpan.
Okay, maybe it's
Dustpan would be packer, just for clarity.
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I get you. Please go on. Yeah, I understand now. Go on.
Possibly when people have been sweeping along the line ages ago, they probably wanted to know what is a very convenient means of packing dirt out, throwing dirt. So I think whoever invented the dustpan must have thoroughly thought through went ahead to create invent rather the dustpan.
Sounds perfect. I actually really love that. And apologies, I didn't hear you clearly from the beginning. Yes, a dust pack or packer. Don't mind us, some of us are rural people. We always call the packer. But yes, a packer in simple words or in layman terms. Yes, that's definitely a very good example. We need to be able to pack things that we sweep together. What is a great solution to that? Packer was the answer. I think that's a really, really good one. Any other examples? Just one more example before we move to the examples listed here. Oh yeah, we're doing great so far.
I think Emeka has his hands raised up.
Oh yeah, please, Emeka, go on. Emeka Precious, you are on mute in case you are saying something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Where with you? Precious, we can't hear you anymore. In case you're still saying something. Okay. We can go on to Emmanuel.
Can you all hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now. Please go on. Hello. Okay. Olugbemi, please, over to you. Emmanuel is back, but yes, let's go with Olugbemi, Oluwakemi now. Just a minute.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I would say the inventory of sanitaries like tissues and sanitary towels also for the female. And this is something that can never run out of use. It's like a continuous process, like throughout your lifetime. It's something you can't do without. So I think it's a very innovative thing to, you know, so that's my contribution. The sanitary towels, like the tissue and the normal pads. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Tissue papers. Thank you so much. There's just a really tricky part with tissue papers. It's because I had heard a little bit about the history before. It's actually slightly accidental. It was first developed like a medicinal paper for personal hygiene to be used in like hospitals and all of that before it then was adapted or adopted into being tissue paper for everyday use. So there's a bit of trickiness around. Yes, there was an intentional search for something for personal hygiene because people cannot just keep getting, what's the word, infected when you use things that are not really clean. but it was a result of, solving that problem for hospitals or like medical related fields and things like that, that then allowed us to adopt it into daily use. So I think that's one of those great examples of something that might have started as an intentional search, and then ended up being almost like an accidental search simply because it was adopted or adapted into something else. So it's like a discovery of gold mine while you were searching for a silver mine. Maybe that's another example, another way to look at it. But that was such a great example. Thank you, Emmanuel. And we would move on just for a bit. Emmanuel, over to you.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the inventions that we start and is now making it is invention of what's it called, solar panels. And it was just based on research to look for cleaner energy without emissions that can affect the ozone and stuff. And now solar panels are really used everywhere, and we have some other companies that are making it in the field.
Yeah, solar panels is a perfect example. It gained ground and became a lot more popular in this century stroke the last century, but significantly more popular in this century. And yes, it came as an alternative source of energy to, burning fossil fuels. That's sort of, hurts our climate, as simple as that. And yeah, there was a lot of intentional scientific research into figuring out first, what are the alternative sources of energy we have? People have figured out, oh, we have wind, we have water, we have solar. And then how do we convert that energy into things we can use in our everyday life to generate electricity and many, many more things like that. And yes, solar panels came into being. So that's such a perfect example. Thank you, Emmanuel. Precious, do we have you back now? Because I'd like us to move along. I just realized we spent a lot of time, so please go on very briefly.
Yes, please. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
One of the ideas that I feel was, well, it was developed by accident was super glue. So the invention of super glue was initially for healing wounds, and it was used in surgical processes for covering up wounds. But now you could see that super glue is used for a lot of things, fixing up broken pieces, nails, lashes, name them. So initially, super glue was just invented for the purpose of surgical processes, but now it could be used for many other different things.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I didn't know that about the super glue. So thank you for educating me. And that's such a great example as well. And I'm glad we finally heard from you. So perfect. Thank you so much, Precious. Thank you so much for everyone that has contributed so far. The examples I like to give, I don't know if how many of us know that the development of the internet was actually an intentional search. It was sort of a research, scientific research by the US government in a way to facilitate cross-computer communications and things like that. We can read up about it, but it was an intentional search. Also for nylon, very similar to the solar panel examples, which was why I thought it was a perfect example. They used to use silk to, pack things before nylon was invented. And obviously, silk became significantly too expensive to just be a packing material. So DuPont actually, I think, invented nylons, and they developed it from obviously polyethylene material and all of that in response to finding cheaper alternatives that allows us to achieve the same goal without, spending so much on silk. And obviously, a significantly more recent example, when the COVID vaccine virus spread across the world, it became essential to develop a vaccine. that can protect people from getting infected in the first place. And you could see how that process went so fast. So normally there are, and interestingly, just 2 weeks ago, I was spending some time in California in one of the research labs that contributed to some of the COVID vaccines that were developed. The scientists there at the time was just trying to explain to me that a lot of when they say they've isolated, and I'm not using the perfect scientific terms here, but when they say they've isolated the proteins that, are critical for the viruses, these are proteins that they've been researching for several years that are probably present in other viruses as well, right? And when they're just doing the research normally, it's just really to classify the components of this and that, to know and how things react to certain things, what forms and what doesn't. But when there is a problem to be solved, the goal then becomes, how do we use all of this scientific knowledge that we have discovered from our research to create something specific in a way that it can protect people, it can solve the problems that we need it to solve. And that's the whole process of, you found it now, you've patented it, you're doing clinical trials and everything that relates to that. So anyways, it's really beautiful. This is probably one of those, or probably the only one that we can have intentional control over. Now, the last one, and which is probably the one thing that people don't really pay any attention to, is and that's, again, I think it's good to clarify that I'm only taking us through this and spending a lot of time on it, because if you're looking to generate ideas, you just want to be surrounded by as many ideas as possible. It's the easiest way to generate new ideas. And I'm hoping that as we are going through all of these examples, going through these stories, this historical context, it's giving you ideas about how to create your own ideas, or it is suggesting things in your personal history that you might not have paid any attention to. And I think that's what this last particular section is really focusing on in terms of idea creation, which is what in your personal histories, what in your legacies, what is in your upbringing, on your background, that might have shown you unique opportunities that you're not paying attention to. I think that's a very important question to ask yourself on a daily basis, because a problem that you've seen every day of your life, or a potential solution you've seen every day of your life, and you've been exposed to from maybe when you were 2-3 years old, that you just weren't paying a lot of attention to. If you start paying attention to them now, your chances of significantly succeeding ahead of, any other one that you come up with through any other means is just higher. It's as simple as that. You can call it legacy advantage, whatever that is, right? I'll try to give us an example, just one general one and a personal one. A general one would be the telephone invention, right? The father of Graham Bell, right? The one who invented the telephone, used to be a tutor for, I think, deaf people. And that required that, he needed to develop some sort of equipment that allowed him to, in quotes, communicate with deaf people. And as simple as that seemed, there were things about how his father worked that influenced how he was able to come up with the telephone. And you can find a lot more examples. For example, Richard Branson of Virgin Group, his mother used to be a flight attendant. So probably every day of his life is thinking about airplanes, because that's just really what his mother did on a daily basis, right? So it would make sense that he grew up and over time ended up starting off as, in the airplane industry, building airplanes, just really offering great service. Virgin Group today is primarily known for their, as much as possible, amazing service in the airline industry, right? If you're looking for luxurious travel, you're probably going to Richard Branson's Virgin Group, alongside many others that have now done very well in this space today. So what am I saying in essence? I'm saying that there are different parts of our backgrounds, upbringings as individuals that influences the kinds of decisions we end up making, the kinds of solutions that we can come up with. And these are things that we don't even need to stress really hard or stretch at all to be able to come up with them. We just need to pay attention to say, what are some of the things that my upbringing has exposed me to? What ideas have randomly come to my mind that I just threw away? Probably those are some of the critical ideas that you need to take seriously. And I'll go to this personal example. Like, you know, it was given during my introduction. My stash is not my first business. This Iru making business was actually my first business. So before I ever went into tech, I was in food processing. But before I went into food processing, my entrepreneurship journey, in quotes, started from, you know, I'd once come up with a solar-powered toolbox that helps people do vertical farming. And I was pitching everywhere, and I lost a lot of competitions and all of those things. I never really managed to get it off the ground. We had come up with ideas around, you know, edutech, building solutions for university students. We had come up with all kinds of ideas, right? And it got to a point in my life, I was just like, I was tired. None of these ideas were picking up. None of them were getting the traction that I was hoping it would get. Nobody was ready to back any of those ideas. And all of a sudden, I remember very clearly, I was actually still a final year student in FUTA, and I had gone for this international competition in Abidjan, and I had just lost. I just lost again, as usual. I was not able to raise any form of funding, anything related to that. And that day, I remember very clearly, the people I lost to, I felt like their ideas were too simple. They were too ordinary. It's the way I would think about it. It's now that I know that no idea is too ordinary, and that's also another great, great lesson to keep in mind. But I paid attention to the fact that even though they were ordinary, in quotes, ideas, they were well executed. So like me that came up with, you know, a lot of complex ideas and I had not managed to secure enough funding to even build a prototype, these people had created solutions as simple as, you know, creating tomato purees and things like that. And they had actual products, they had actual buyers already, they had proven their concept. And for me, that was why they won. And that made a lot of sense. And I remember very clearly asking myself, what is the one thing in my background today that if I choose to launch that idea, I can almost immediately create my first version just because I know it so well? And the answer was very simple. The answer stared right at me at the face. My mom always made her own Iru at home, simply because she would tell me the one you buy in the market, you have to rinse it. When you rinse it, you have removed all the nutrients. It becomes very useless to your body. It smells, it does this, it does that. So my mom is in the health sector. She pays attention to nutrition a lot. So once every 3 to 4 months from when I was a child, she would actually spend time and start the process from the beginning to the end by herself. She would, you know, she'll find a way to dry it up, extend the shelf life to 12 months. Sometimes she would grind into powdery form so that she can use it in more varieties of food. So I was like, okay, you know, she never did it as a business. I can do it as a business. And that was the light bulb moment for me. So before I came back to Nigeria in Abidjan, I sent to her a voice note. Hey, Ma, I need an example of this. You make this already. Can you make me so volume? I want to do a pilot. And then I figured out, oh, I can't package it the way everybody else was packaging it at the time. This was as far back as 2018. And, you know, we came up with really nice, innovative packaging, tried to remove the smell, all of those things. We created a patent on making it into Billion Cube. We secured a patent on it, and all of the things that revolved around that. But the fundamental thing was all of these things, all of these ideas were built on a legacy foundation that is tied directly to my background, to the things I've been exposed to from the day one of my life. Now, when I'm telling the story of why I came up with the idea, why I'm doing it, people actually take me seriously because it's coming from a very personal standpoint. And I think that's a very important thing. Sometimes it's not enough to come up with an idea. The why of the idea is also extremely important. The world runs on stories, on really great stories, and there is almost no story truer than a personal story, right? People relate with personal stories. So what am I saying in essence? If there is a solution you are coming up with that is not really well tied to either like your personal experiences or your personal upbringing, or a problem you've always faced yourself that you're trying to solve, it becomes slightly harder to tell the story. And I'm trying to be careful here because there are many successful solutions that don't necessarily fit into that box. So don't think about fitting yourself into any box. No, I'm just saying that, especially when you're just starting off and you have relatively limited resources, it's usually good to leverage the resource you have in terms of experience and legacy and background first. As you grow, as you attract more resources, as you build reputation, it becomes easier to do things outside of your background, because then you already have a lot of reputation, you already have a lot of, let's use the word goodwill here, that you can leverage to build trust with people that feel, you do have a personal story, but I trust you, you've done great things before, you will do great things again. Anyways, I know I spent a lot of time on that. Are there any questions before we move on? Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you
please
so much,
go
sir.
on.
My name is Charles.
Charles, nice to meet you, Charles.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Your story really inspires me. I actually grew up in a village, so basically, background-wise, I grew up as a farmer. Following my dad to farm. Do a lot of things in the farm. But at a point in time, I discovered that I don't want to end up like this. So I was thinking before I had admission to school, then thereafter I left home. So I was thinking if I can actually venture into something better than farming. You understand? Now, listening to your story now considering the background and how you can actually be up from there. So what do you suggest for somebody like you who has a background in farming?
Great question. And I think the answer is staring at you at the face. Again, there is no one way to it, and there are multiple answers, right? But one I think could be a very good answer is you don't have to continue. I didn't do it the way my mom did it, for example. My mom never took it commercial. My mom never developed it into bullion cubes. My mom never secured any patent or any new approach. It was just really forced an inspiration to do things differently. And I think that's the way you should think about your farming as well. What are some of the critical things that has held back your parents or people around you from doing farming at scale, right? Can you find an idea that solves those specific problems at scale? Things that they are not able to do in volumes. What new idea can you bring to bear in a way that you can do these things at volumes? And I'm sure when you look at that value chain, you'll find a lot of answers. It can be as simple as producing improved yield seeds. So if they used to plant seeds or maize seeds that used to generate, I don't know, 1 kg of corn at the end of the day, maybe what you're going to do is focus on supplying yields that would, seeds that would 3x their yield. And then you can serve a lot of customers, because a lot of farmers, because you know exactly how farmers today do their job, the kind of problems they face. You might be able to give them some of it on credit and take your money back at the point of yield. But my point is, your personal life experiences has given you so much context into the everyday of a farmer, which means you are in such a unique position to solve the farmer's problem than a guy that grew up in maybe, I don't know, New York City, who has never been on a farm, who doesn't even know that apples grow on trees. I don't know, right? So my point is, there is so much, and I think it's important to emphasize this. Usually, yes, you can research and, ChatGPT, Google, wherever it is to say, oh, how does this happen? And then you can read, you can have head knowledge. But what life gives us more than head knowledge is context. It's always going to be different for somebody that read that yam grows in the soil and watches a video of people pulling it out from the tuber. And you that spent the first 6-7 years of your life going to farm with your parents and actually farming yam yourself, you would just have a lot more context about how yam is grown over the person that watched it on YouTube, right? Which means that there is an advantage there for you. If there's going to be a problem solved in yam farming, you are in a better position to solve the problem than maybe somebody else, maybe me that I've never been on a farm in quotes, and I'm not saying I've never been on a farm. I have many times. I'm just saying as an example, like you'll probably be in a better position than I would be. So I think that's the way I would approach it in simple terms. All I'm saying, summary-wise, is can you spend time, look through your experiences, and figure out what can I do differently that can make everything around here improve significantly, can allow me operate at scale, but it's still within the same industry. Because just because you don't have to do that, but I'm saying it gives you a lot of advantage, and that's an advantage you can leverage. So if you can find a solution within that space, perfect. But the answer does not lie with me. It lies with you who has the lived experiences.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you too. I think we are running out of time. So if there are any other questions, we would take them at the end. Oh, dustpan. Okay, yeah. I'm just checking the comment section. All right. So let's keep going. I think I really wanted us to spend a lot of time on idea generation, and we've done that. Now, last question on idea generation. What do you think is common to all of these approaches that we have discussed so far? One or two people, very quickly. For you, what is common to all of them? The one that we stumbled on, or the one that we intentionally researched, or the one that, it came as a result of our upbringing, our backgrounds, that is legacy inclined. What is common to all of them?
Let me try, sir.
Go on, please, Charles.
Okay, sir. I think the first thing is problem solving. So both the intentional one and the accidental one were able to solve a particular problem in the society.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better. You've said it so perfectly. Problem solving is definitely the number one thing that links all of them together. Either you fall on it, either it is, as a result of your background, either it is, you just were very intentional about it. At the end of the day, the only thing that makes it a, in quotes, valid idea is the fact that it actually solves a real problem. Any other thing, or any other one with any other thing? There are lots more people on this call, and there are people I've not heard from at all. Should I call names? Just one more person and we move on.
Okay, let me say something.
Yeah, blessing.
A similarity I observed is the fact that most of them started small and grew. So there's growth and there's progress. Eventually, they became a success.
Great. Most of them start small and grows. And I think I really love that example. So, and I'd like to touch a little bit more on that point. So I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. So, okay, great. When my own journey started on college campus while in school. So I had a lot of friends that were also trying to start something. Just a minute, Stanley. I'll go to you in just a minute. Yeah, so I had a lot of friends that, I also really tried to build something really interesting. And in our very initial days, we only focused on very big, grand ideas. We would have an idea to do something I don't know if somebody had something to do in space, or we have an idea to, transform. We just always had ideas that were, in quotes, out of our reach, right? The idea of, just starting small and figuring out how to take things step by step was not our own. Like, if you came with an idea that, seemed too simple, we would not be interested. And with time, we quickly learned that doesn't just make sense. I remember one of the ideas I had early on and developed extensively, but never managed to build a prototype, was the fact that I want to build a biogas plant. As university students with zero resources, again, these things were not impossible, but it's always better when you can start small. It's always better when you can think about what is the smallest way to kick this off. Because especially many of us come from limited resources. Let's not use the word impoverished societies, but limited resources, which means that we didn't always have all the resources we needed or we need to create the change or the solutions that we want to create. So in simple terms, I really love that example. As you're thinking through your ideas, think about how an idea that you can really start small and grow over time. The idea of, just starting from the top and then going up all the way like that is significantly easier when you have a lot of resources. When you don't, you want to take a lot of the lean startup approach, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Stanley, I didn't forget you. It's your turn. Stanley, are you still there? You had the answer. Okay, I guess not. So what binds these approaches together? Like we said, they have, problem-solving characteristics. Is probably the most critical similarity. A lot of them, all of them, have real-world applications. So, and again, we intentionally did not go into examples of, how people have come up with, not people, Albert Einstein's law of relativity and the things around black hole and all of that. For today, as far as I know, the theories around the wormhole, the black hole, any of those, don't yet have enough real-world applications. And that's really not our focus today. So we're not talking theoretical physics here today. We're talking real-world applications. So when we think about generating ideas for our businesses, we are purely talking about real-world applications. And there's a lot of innovative thinking. Innovative thinking shows itself in different forms. It might be in the launching of a completely new product, application, applying an existing product to a new market, adapting in the face of new challenges, like the OP example, and many, 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 many more. And most importantly, they have impactful applications. That is, they actually have an impact, either in the society, on the individual, on certain things, whatever that thing is, we can actually trace its impact. I think these are 4 extremely critical things that binds all of these different approaches we've discussed together. And with that, these are a lot of tools that you can use to assist you. Again, keyword here is assist. The key part of figuring the ideas is really about your own approach, your own process, but there are tools that can help you as you think through these things, and these are just some of them. I wouldn't need to list and talk about them in order to save on time. So let's move on to market validation. So for the first and second modules, we've gone through what the approaches are and what the process or the tools that we can use looks like. Now we want to go into, we've created the idea, how do we check if it will be successful in the market? And that's also an extremely critical point, and that's simply what market validation is. I wouldn't be going through a lot of slides, and I have just this really simple question as far as market validation is concerned. It's as simple as, should this thing go to the market? We have developed a solution. We have an idea, how do we know if it should go to the market? I'd like to hear about any of you's experiences. So if you have any personal experience about an idea that you had, how did you decide if it should go on the market or not? It doesn't matter if the idea failed or succeeded. All I want to hear is what convinced you that this market should go into this product should go into the market. Oh, great. Eniola, over to you. You're on mute, Eniola, in case you're saying something.
All right. Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When I wanted to start up with my own business, because I'm into fashion designing, so I didn't really know how to start because it was around the ASU period during that very long strike. So my mom just encouraged me to like check on stuff that are like always being used by people. So that was when I started with hair accessories like scrunchies and stuff like that. But when it was time to like start selling them, I was scared that it wasn't really going to move, and baby turbans. Then I saw that it was like really, really much on demand. So like I feel like if you're sure that you want to push something out to the public, you really want to sell something, you should make sure that it's something that people make use of. And like a lot of girls basically use scrunchies to pack their hair other than rubber bands because they don't want their hair falling out and stuff like that. So like it was really on high demand. So like you need to look at your locality as well, like who are people that use this more, because adults don't really use it, so it's more like girls in school and younger people that use it, stuff like that. Yes,
this is quite interesting. Thank you, Eniola. And as simple as our explanation is, there's so much to unpack from there. So from everything she just said, she has already talked about customer demand. That is, people really want this. She has talked about our process of finding the customer demand, which is she observed our society, she observed our community, figured out who and what people want, or what who wants, right? So I think that's extremely important. She has also shown an understanding of our customer segment. All in that very small conversation, she has talked about, it's school students or this that likes this, and this is what they use. These are the alternative products. They don't want to use rubber band. They want to use this. And all of these are critical elements of how to really validate your market across any industry. Those things are very consistent. You want to understand, is there demand for this thing? You want to observe your market. You want to understand different customer segments that exist. You want to just really spend time to also know what are the alternatives. How are they solving the problem you are trying to solve for them today, right? If, for example, maybe, for example, I look at farmers I'm from Osun State, so let's use Osun State. I look for farmers in some part of Osun State that currently don't have, what's it called, machineries. They don't have tractors to do their stuff. And I have an idea. Let us sell tractors to them, right? Maybe that's a great idea. But when we get to customer validation, we want to then understand, even though there might be demand for tractors, is it real or is it realistic to expect these farmers to be able to buy tractors? Do they have enough money to be able to buy tractors? Are their farms big enough to justify the cost of tractors? Then, when we understand those, we may then need to adapt our initial idea to say, okay, we're not going to sell tractors to them because maybe it doesn't make economic sense for them, or maybe they can't afford it. However, we can rent tractors to them, and instead of them even paying us cash, maybe we can take a percentage of their yield after they have, done the things that they need to do. So what am I saying in essence in all of this is that the whole point of market validation is really understanding the market. This chart is probably the best I have seen as long as market validation is concerned. At the end of the day, you're trying to answer 4 extremely critical questions. Demand. That is, are there human beings on this earth Because it's only human beings that can pay. So even when you are building animal food, so if, for example, you're creating dog food, right? It's not the dog that will pay. It's the human being that would pay. So the human that owns the dog. So what am I saying? Is there human demand for this thing, right? Critical point, is good to separate customer from consumer. In the case of dog food, for example, the consumer is the dog, but the real customer is the dog owner. In the case of edutech for children, the customer that is the person paying, is the parent. The consumer of your content itself is the child. It's not the child that will pay. It's probably not the child that will make the decision. Can the child influence the decision by showing liking for your products? Yes. Can the dog influence the decision by showing liking for your products? Yes. But ultimately, the customer is a separate person entirely. And when you think about this, desirability makes sense to understand who is the customer, who is the consumer, and how does that fit into the demand mechanism. That's the first most important question. It's probably still the important question by a mile out of all four, but I'd say all four has equal weighting. The second one is it viable as a business? Am I going to always be able to spend less making it than selling it, right? And these are, you can go on and on with several examples in the world of businesses that are started without figuring that part out. And usually, many businesses don't necessarily figure it out from the beginning, but they have assumptions that gives them conviction about this is doable, right? So even if we are not there today, even if our unit gross price is higher than our unit selling price today, we will still manage to, survive. And over time, maybe when we reach economics of scale, we will be able to change things, right? So these are different ways we can look at these things. So first one, is there a real demand by human beings for this thing? Is it a viable business? That is, are we going to be able to do it sustainably? And sustainability has to do with, in simple words, spending less to create the value than the cost of the price of selling it, right? Or at least make it break even if you're not going to, make a profit. But sustainability or viability is an extremely important point. The third one, which people also don't pay a lot of attention to, is it impactful? Is it of real value? The reason being that when it is not of real value, even when there is demand for it, that demand can be very artificial. And I can try to give you an example. I'm trying to pick my examples very carefully. So I'm in fintech today, and one way we look at certain parts of finance is that any part of finance that is not tied to real economic activities, they are not impactful. And over time, they will crumble. And that is why we think Ponzi schemes will always crumble. Because even though there is a desire for it, even though it can be very viable, just the fact that it's not actually creating real value is just really a cyclical scheme of turning money around. It would usually always crumble because it has no central theme, central impact that keeps it grounded, right? So a Ponzi scheme would fit 3 out of these 4 things you have here, but it has no integrity in terms of impact. And so think of it as when they say the foundation of something has no integrity. It simply means it has no pillars to stand on. And that is why it's always going to fall, right? And the last one is it visible? Visibility. Is it actually doable? And the example I always love to give about this is slightly controversial. I don't know how many of us have heard about the Theranos story, right? Theranos was a business or a startup based out of Silicon Valley in California that wanted to create a device called the Edison. They all had really amazing names. There's a whole documentary about it, I think, on Netflix. If you have time, watch it. I think it's a really good one. They wanted to create a device called Theranos, and Theranos was going to conduct literally all the tests I'll figure out everything wrong with you. So many tests, a lot of tests, maybe not all, just by taking a pinch of your blood. Now, in very clear, simple terms, that idea is amazing. If you have gone to an hospital at any point and they have to take so much of your blood just to be able to do 2-3 tests, you would understand why that is so extremely amazing. Is there demand for it? Yes. If they figure things out, would they be able to, is it going to be viable as a business? Absolutely. Is it creating real value and impact? Yes, without a doubt. But was it visible? That's where many people disagreed. Till date, I don't think we have anything called the Edison, based on the things they were trying to develop. They ended up failing after raising billions of dollars of venture funding. They were already valued at billions and billions of dollars, and they still ended up failing because of many things. You would say, oh, they were not being honest. There was a whole controversy. But the most critical of them was that the technology they claimed to have built did not do what they said it would do. So even though the idea was amazing, and they spent a lot of time, I think well over 7 years, developing and deploying the solution, it never actually did the things that they said or promised that it would be able to do. So those are things we need to be able to really think about. If I came up with an idea of, let me see an idea that seems very ridiculous right now. Because we're in a world where you can't think of something that is extremely ridiculous in terms of visibility anymore. But let's just say, for example, wow. Our world has changed so much that almost everything seems possible today. But let's say my job right now is to build, or my idea right now is to build flying cars that runs on water in Nigeria. Maybe this year, deploying something like that this year, today. I can't say in the future. I can't say 2, 3, 4 years from now. Things change so fast. But this year, maybe that is not a visible idea, right? Maybe that's actually not doable. If you build flying cars with the kind of traffic we have in Lagos, is there probably going to be demand for it? Yes. With how expensive fuel is today, if it's running on water, is there going to be demand for it? Yes. Is it probably a very feasible business? Viable business? Yes. Will it have integrity and would it, have the right impact? Most likely, yes. But the real question is it actually doable, especially within the time frame that you want to do it? Maybe not. I'm not that great in science to know for sure. But just from my basic understanding, maybe not, most likely not. So in summary, you want to make sure that your idea that you're trying to deploy falls in that innovation sweet spot that you're looking at. You want to make sure it's intersecting at all of those 4 critical points. I know I've said a lot of words. I've taken a lot of time. And this is the last slide. We just move straight into your questions. The question then is, what tools can I use to validate the market? I find this process or this framework kind of really helpful because a lot of times when people think about validating the market, they think about it in a linear form, but it's never linear. And what I mean by that is, for example, when we are creating My Stash, and My Stash pretty much is another savings platform. But when we were starting it, there were already a lot of savings platforms in the market. So the initial point was, why should you build another savings digital app when there's already a lot of them existing? And at the time we were starting, we figured that there was just a really, at least at the time, a relatively small section of the market that didn't manage to save despite using the existing savings apps. And the explanation was very simple. I use PiggyVest, I use Carrywise. I tell them save 100K out of my salary the day it comes in. But before they charge me, when the money comes in, I've already finished spending it. So it fails on month 1, fails on month 2, fails on month 3, and automatically, they just stop trying to charge me. And we found a lot of people with those kind of stories. So we said, okay, no problem. Can we then figure out a way to help you save in a way that you would not miss out of it at all? So we said, okay, we're going to track your financial data and help you save as you spend. At the time, obviously, OPay was not existing. Kuda was not anywhere much yet. So save as you spend was not in any way a concept in Nigeria at the time, which allowed us to have a bit of first mover advantage. And that worked for us. But that told us that it was viable because there was an existing problem. There was a new novel approach to go about it. But that was not the end of it, right? The next big thing was the fact that we realized, oh, the open banking data we were using to collect the save as you spend, to collect, oh, somebody is writing on the screen. Anyways, so the open banking data we were using to collect all the information that we needed was not really reliable, right? So we had to integrate with a lot of banks and all of that. And now we have to go through this process again. And that's why you need to think about it in a cyclical form. To say, okay, when we face challenges around this deployment, let's go back to the drawing board and go through the process again and continue to readapt, mix up the methods, figure out the ideal customer. In my Stashes case, our ideal customer changed because our product had to change, even though we were trying to achieve precisely the same goals. So we realized Save as you spend, it's not that reliable after 6 months of launching and onboarding over 10,000 customers. So we said, okay, what is reliable? We said, okay, we can go directly to people's payroll system. So since the problem is that you usually would spend your money the moment it comes in, such that, you know, savings companies cannot remove your money. What if we went to the source of your money and deducted the savings before you actually get paid? So we started going to companies and saying, allow us to integrate with your payroll system, allow your employees to be able to set instructions on save so percentage of my salary before you pay me. So that, you know, it's money that enters my account that I can spend now. The one that did not enter, I cannot spend it. And we found that that worked, right? But that meant our entire customer segment needed to change. Our entire technology needed to change. Our entire process needed to change. In fact, we used to do a lot of B2C marketing. Now we had to switch to B2B marketing. So everything about how we approach things changed, right? And over time, the kind of customers also changed. We used to do purely Naira-based savings. Over time, the customers are saying, if you're saving directly from my salary, I just want you to keep it in foreign currency because I don't want to face devaluation problems. Again, we're listening to the customers and we're making the necessary adjustments. So what am I saying? Set the clear goals, do your homework, be clear on who your customer is, mix up your methods, but most importantly, keep testing, keep learning, keep adapting, and you're going to continue that process for the rest of your life. So market validation doesn't just stop the first time you do it. It needs to be happening consistently because so many things are changing in the market every single day. A new regulation is coming out, a new technology is coming out, something is happening somewhere that can genuinely affect how your business operates. And we're going to, you know, I still wanted to give you examples of tools that can be very helpful. My very best one out of all of this is jobs to be done. The reason being that you can search online to find templates of all of these market validation tools, but job to be done is such a great one, primarily because it's as straightforward as it says. It says, for us to know if your idea is great or not, which job is this going to help us do? So if you define the job to be done, and you can define how your idea helps us do the job that needs to be done, then you have validated the market. It's as simple as that. There are many templates online to help you to do that, but there are a lot of other options that you can use as well. So our big take-home assignment here is use any of these standardized methods or tools that I've just shown you to be able to really validate your idea. I know the team would check in with you on how to, you know, submit all of this and evaluate. So that's pretty much everything. It's time to take a bit more questions. I know I've gone past an hour mark and I just didn't want to keep going. So now it's all over to you. Any questions? Or comments? Can anyone still hear me?
Yes,
Well,
I
so
can hear
quiet.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay, should I go first?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
so yeah, if you can ask your question.
So the question is, based on this, should this go on the market? Would you have an idea, and the idea doesn't strike out all these 4 points, and then you just change the idea, or probably just, like, okay, basically, what do you do when your idea does not strike out all these 4 points?
Very amazing question. What do you do when the idea doesn't strike all these options? I think the answer is simple. You first ask why, right? There are a lot of tools for figuring out root causes, right? I know the 5 whys is one of the best approaches. So you ask why the first time. When you get an answer, you ask why is that answer and why is that answer. But by the time you get to the 5th why, you probably have all the answers you need already. Anyways, that's that. So my answer to you is first ask why. Understand why it is not ticking all the boxes. Because when you understand why it is not ticking all the boxes, then it becomes clear on how can you make it tick all the boxes, which means what do you need to change in the idea? Or do you need to change the entire idea to tick all the boxes? In an ideal sense, trust me, you don't want to go ahead if you don't see a future where the idea tick all of these boxes. Like I said, it doesn't have to tick the boxes today, right? And a good example of that would be, for example, when they started developing ChatGPT, right? To create the first generative AI tool probably cost them millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? And in that moment, the people that would probably pay for that first tool were not going to pay millions and millions of dollars for it because it wasn't that great anyways, right? However, in the analysis, they must have been easily convinced that at some point in the future, the cost of serving each customer of ChatGPT is going to be significantly less than the price that the customer would pay. So even though it was not ticking the box for today, there is a path to it ticking the box tomorrow. So the key question here is, when you say it doesn't tick the boxes, if your why is, oh, it just doesn't tick it today, but I'm convinced it will tick it in the future, then you have your answer. You should go ahead. All you need to figure out is the resources until you get to the point where it ticks the boxes, attracting the right resources, right? But if you feel it would never tick the boxes, even in the future, even when certain circumstances change along the line, then you want to make sure you can adapt it today. You can make all the necessary changes today because it's going to save you a lot of headaches. And like I said, the process is cyclical. So just because it ticks the boxes today does not mean it will always tick the boxes, which is why you need to consistently pay attention and you're consistently asking yourself the necessary questions so that you can make the necessary adaptations as soon as it becomes obvious. Does that answer your question, Blessing?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I'm guessing there is none other. So over to you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been a pleasure to just really have this conversation with you guys. And in the end, all I am wishing you is the very best in everything, in how you build, in the ideas you develop. Yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for taking your time to.
I just can see a question in the chat
Okay.
box. Yeah, just very quickly, I tried to answer that.
Okay, so I think,
Mhm.
sorry, before you answer, I think some people are confused on how the questions should go. Maybe they don't know when they should speak. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand and then
Okay.
I would call and unmute so that you can ask questions. All right. But the questions, yes, let's go.
Okay. Thank you. Apologies, I should have made that clearer. So yes, in the notes, the question is, my question is that what are the things that needs to be put into consideration when searching for ideas? I think the best way to answer that is, what were the things that were common about all the approaches that we discussed? Those are the things to consider, right? You want to make sure that you're thinking through from the perspective of what is solving a problem? Does it have real-world applications? Does it involve innovative thinking? Are you coming up with something unique, something peculiar, something that is valuable, that is impactful? Does it have an impactful application? And once you can do all that, I think you end up coming up with an idea that is great. It might be very simple, but it's probably very good as well. So I think these are the things I would prioritize when thinking through a new idea. When I'm searching for a new idea, I just want to consider if it is like a problem-solving idea, like is it really solving a real problem? Does it have real-world applications? Is it impactful? And am I thinking innovatively about it? I think those are the big considerations I will put in place. Yeah, so if we have any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll just unmute and talk as well. Anyone works.
Okay, someone asked that question in the chat, how they can network it to you on social media.
Great question. LinkedIn is fine. Probably most reachable on Twitter, so feel free to link on Twitter as well. Yeah, I usually respond faster on Twitter, to be honest. My Twitter handle is Oparino. Yep, I've typed that in. And on LinkedIn, I am just my full name, Adebowale Oparino. Thank you. Great. So I'm guessing we are done.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. I think that you have a task for them at the end. Is there?
Yes.
Or you could ask questions also just to see if anyone, whether the summary of like what they've learned and all of that, we could see that.
Right.
If there's any last task you have for them, that can happen as well.
Okay. So I will try to re-emphasize the assignment in general, which is whatever ideas you've come up with so far, please make sure you use any of these standardized methods, and these are the standardized methods I'm talking about. Just do your research. There is a template for all of these systems for all of these methods or tools that I've identified. Feel free to check the different templates, find the one that you think works best for you, and then try to use that to validate your idea. That's the primary assignment here. It's been great with your feedbacks and all of that, questions along the line. So yes, if we can have 1 or 2 people just to wrap up on what are some of your biggest takeaways from this session, I think that would be great. Who wants to go first? Okay. Adewale Ayomide, please go on. You are on mute.
Ayomide, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Ayomide, you're still muted. You need to unmute.
So we'll be rounding up soon, but this particular session, you can just give takeaways that you've learned. And if you also have questions with your businesses personally and you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure this is viable, you can ask practical questions like that from him as well. So he can give you insight from his wealth of experience on how you can navigate those areas. So those are questions you can ask as well.
Good afternoon.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Stanley.
Okay, I think what I learned from this is any idea you are creating or anything you are venturing into, you must first of all find the needs of your customers or needs of people, what the thing can solve, the problem it can solve in the society. That's actually what I learned from it. Like, it must have a solution to some certain problems. You don't just create ideas. You check whether it solves some problems, check whether it fits in human needs, because our main goal is to solve human needs. So that is actually what I learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Yeah, that's a perfect takeaway. I think, yeah, it summarizes it well. Focus on the customer is the most important thing. Make sure that it serves a real problem, or it solves a real problem. It's impactful. Thank you so much. Eniola had, I think, her hands raised. Do you still have something to say?
Yeah, I have more of a question than an input. So
Right.
it was about, so I have an idea. Sorry, I've been in and out of the meeting. So I just have a question. So I
Right.
have this idea, right? It's around climate and sustainability, but it's not something that is very big in Nigeria, right? And I don't see
Can you take that again? Did you say family consulting?
climate sustainability,
Right, climate
the climate
sustainability.
tech.
Okay,
Yes.
climate tech,
I
all right.
don't, it's not something that is well established or it's not something that people know about it. So is it something that, or like, is it best to let people discover the market or like take that chance and like, because like I've gone for ideas and like, most of the things I've been getting is, oh, people don't need this. This is not a very immediate need of the people, that kind of thing. What do you do in that kind of space when that's the response you'll be getting from like people that you pitch the idea to? They feel like it's a brilliant idea, but they don't feel that is something that Nigerians will key into. Like, what do you do in that kind of situation? Do you just let go of the idea or do you still push on?
Right. That's a great question. And what I have for you is, I think one thing I've always taken seriously from Jeff Bezos, he encourages every founder to be adamant and crazy about their vision, but flexible about their approach or how they plan to achieve it, right? What am I trying to say, or why am I referencing that? I'm referencing it because ultimately, climate tech or climate sustainability has to do with protecting our world today, right? And I'm guessing there are many ways to do that, and there are many approaches to that. Now, if you are introducing an approach that, the market is just not there yet, an approach that is completely ahead of the curve, I can see why people would push back. But the big question I have for you is going to be, are there ways you can do climate sustainability today in relation to things that people are already familiar with? And what do I mean by that? So maybe one way to do climate tech would be to start promoting electric vehicles and selling electric vehicles. But again, the economic situation of a majority of Nigerians means electric vehicles are expensive up front. There are probably not a lot of the second-hand versions of them. The majority of Nigerians drive second-hand cars. So yeah, Nigerians may not key into that kind of sustainability idea, right? And that's a very good example. But if an alternative example could also be burning climate-friendly briquettes instead of charcoal, right? An alternative source of energy that is cheap, that is similar to something they're already used to, charcoal, but achieves the same goal, which is reduces the amount of CO2 that is released into the air. So what am I saying, Eniola? I'm saying in the end, obviously the answer lies with you, but it's always great that you can take people from known to the unknown. So keeping your vision and your goal in mind, are there ways you can introduce climate tech into our current everyday life? Are there things in our current day-to-day that you can just substitute or change a little bit of it and still achieve the same goal? I think those are the questions I would be asking to be able to arrive at the perfect idea. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes, thank you. I feel like one of the things I picked up was the adamant with your ambition and be flexible with your approach. Thank you so much. I really picked something from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Very grateful.
I have,
Oh yes, Ambassador, go on.
yeah. So concerning the should this go on the market, the 4 points there, you used an example, that Theranos. I don't know if I pronounced because my network has been bad. The Theranos used as an example. The Theranos. Do you think, okay, the only thing that flopped their whole idea is the feasibility aspect, right? And do you think, you said, I thought you mentioned that they went through 7 years of hard work, right? Before on the innovation and everything, 7 years. Do you think it is advisable, like, okay, since that feasibility is the only thing that flopped the whole idea, do you think it is advisable to go through another 7 years of bettering their innovation, or to just modify it into something else and then come back stronger? That's my question.
That's a great question, and thank you, Abosede. So yes, Theranos is the pronunciation. That's very correct. And just as a disclaimer, no, I don't think feasibility was the only problem. I think that there were definitely controversies around the ethical attributes of the founder. In fact, but a lot of it stemmed from the feasibility problem. So their technology wasn't working as the founder claimed it was working. And ultimately, the founder was sentenced to prison as a result. But the key thing here is the technology wasn't working. If the technology was working, even if the founder was unethical, they probably would have still been successful. They would just have had to let go of their founder, right? But just because things weren't working, the founder was out there claiming it was working and finding different ways to cover those loopholes was how they became a major global controversy. So I wanted to just give that disclaimer first, right? But when we streamline everything that happened to them into these 4 components, the only one thing they actually didn't have is technology. You know, this conversation is not about ethics, about the kind of leader leading the organization, about co-founder dynamics. There are so many more things that comes into a business being successful or not. But when we streamline everything into, is this idea viable? Should it go into the market or not? These are the 4 things we want to look at. Now, to go into your question of, if I have built something for 7 years and it is not working, it is not looking like it would work, I think that's the key question here, right? Theoretically speaking, was Edison possible, the technology they were trying to build? Was it possible as a result of the technologies or the fundamental technologies that were available at the time? Many people argue that the answer is no, right? Because for a system like that to work, there were just, nanotechnology had not reached its stage that could power the kind of technology that they wanted to build. Many theoretical scientists believe that, yes, with time, as we grow around nanotechnologies and all, because let me try to paint the picture without losing you. I don't know if you have a science background. I don't have much of it, but from my understanding, for you to build a single box-like machine, that can do so many tests, there's a lot of physical movement, right? So you need something to titrate, something to do this, you need certain reactive tools, you need all kinds of machines to work together in just one box. So many of them to work together in only one box. Now, except you can do exactly the same kind of revolution that happened with mainframe computers to laptops. And we all know what happens from mainframe computers to laptops. From mainframe computers, all the components were really big and all of that. That was how we needed it to be. It could fill an entire room just to have a, I don't know, 1 gig RAM processing unit kind of computer. But with time, nanotechnology allowed us to replicate exactly the same thing into a simple motherboard with chips. And that was why we could build very powerful computers in something as simple as a notebook laptop, right? Now, there is a fundamental shift in technological infrastructure that made laptops possible. So from my understanding of what Theranos was trying to build, there also needs to be a fundamental shift in the infrastructure for testing blood and things like that for something like Edison to be realistic. Now, if we understand that to be true, then it means that, I would say, from my perspective, it means that it doesn't really make a lot of sense to continue to pour in a lot of money, a lot of energy into a technology whose fundamental infrastructure has not yet shifted. It would be like trying to build a laptop in the 1800s, in the 19th century. That would have been impossible at the time because the fundamental technologies that would power it just didn't exist. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So in summary, all I'm saying is how you decide whether to keep going or whether to cut your losses ultimately will depend on you. But if you're going to choose to continue, then you want to be at least convinced that theoretically this is possible, simply because the technologies that exist today can power the technology I'm trying to build. No technology is built in isolation. It's dependent on other aspects of already existing technology. And I think that's the most important thing here. So if something is not, if we think something technological is not feasible, it's primarily because the advancements in technology that will power that has just not been discovered yet. And there are people in research labs that their job is not to create a new innovation today. Their job is to discover things that can be used to create innovations tomorrow. And those kind of labs fail all the time. It's part of their design. But that's not what we do when we're trying to build a business. And I think that's a very important disclaimer, right? Now, when those people maybe do 1,000 experiments and 5 of them succeed, those 5 that succeed changes something fundamentally from a technology infrastructure standpoint. Then it falls on us that want to innovate for business to now say, okay, because of these shifts in technology, now I can build this kind of technology. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So, great. I am guessing that is all, finally. Apologies if I became a little bit technical at some points. I'm just really trying to give you guys as much context as possible. But yeah, this has been very good. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. So over to you.
Thank you very much for handling the session. I'm sure from the responses, everyone had a great time. Everyone has learned a lesson or two. And like you said, you can always reach out to him on LinkedIn or Twitter. If you were in and out of the call, he did say that his Twitter is a more accessible platform and his handle is in the chat. Let me see if I can bring that up again. A Oparino. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate this. So some of them will be reaching out and we hope that they have the answers, their questions answered. So the next thing we'll be doing is for attendance, I think we will be sending the link to the group now. We'll send it to you. I would find a way to copy and paste it to the chat so that you can fill your attendance. We would not end the call